Good morning. It's very lopsided over here. Full room on this side and half full. You guys didn't recruit people today or what? Yeah. Like Guam, something like that. Might tip over. All right, my head's kind of clogged. I've been sick for a couple days, so who knows what's going to come out of my mouth today. It could be fun. Could be interesting. Mandy's here, so who knows what's going to happen. What? It might sound like that because I can't even hear myself right now. Everything's like clogged up. So I might be yelling, and if I am, you got to tell me like, hey, turn the voice down a little bit. So it was interesting. Several things were interesting this week. Mandy used a term that I thought, gosh, this was interesting. I don't know if you learned it in your group, the God wink thing. So it was fascinating way to say that. And I've heard several of those this week. I've seen several of those this week. And even this morning, there was 3 of those things that took place in this room. I was like, wow, this is fascinating. So as we get to it, I want to share those winks. But contemplative prayer. So we're continuing this idea of meditative, deep prayer to be into, or for all of us to come into the presence of God. What does that mean to be present? You were at our house last night. Claire was at our house. We were having dinner last night, and she was talking about just being present and being in the presence of God. And this is something that sometimes we don't always talk about because it seems sometimes difficult to even understand that. And I asked my question that was brought up last night, and I said, if I was gone for a week, what would you miss about me? And so she shared a few things, and she said, well, what would you miss about me? And really, the only thing that I could say was, there's not a lot to say, there's lots to say, but it all boiled down to one thing, and it was just, I would miss your presence. You know, there's a lot I can point to this and this and this, but really it's just a matter of just you being present in the room with me, you being present when we go to bed, you being present as we're just discussing the day. It has nothing to do with what we're discussing, but just you being present with me is the idea of being present with God. And sometimes that's hard for us to understand, but just the idea of just being in the presence of God is what He desires for each and every one of us. And so as we have been talking about this, and now week 3, I was wondering, how many of you have tried to, or maybe found it hard to find yourself in some type of contemplative prayer where you tune everything out and you just spend 5 minutes to just sit and just be present with God? Did anybody try that over the last couple of weeks? A little bit? And? Can you share? Willing to share? What is it like? Difficult?
Sorry, guys.
That's okay, though. That was the whole point. Remember, I said, like, your thoughts are going to drift, and that's totally fine. Sometimes the whole point is to bring it back to the centering, maybe a word or a verse, Lectio Divina, right? Focus on just that one word and just be present with that word. Whatever that word that you just read is, doesn't matter. Just be present with that. For those who haven't been able to, let me ask you a question. What holds you back? Fear. Okay. What else? Guilt. Interesting. Okay. How much of it is busyness? I don't have enough time in my day to do this. Or maybe I forget. I just forgot. Maybe it's just not a priority in my life. What's the vision of the gathering again? You guys remember? Hello? There we go. Right? Over and over and over. We gotta ingrain this to become a spiritual community of restoration, authenticity, and wholeness through our pursuit to live as Jesus lived. Is this just a statement that we have, or is this an actual desire of this community? Does this community, do we here desire restoration? Wholeness? Do we desire that for a hurting community outside of this room? Are these things that we genuinely care about, or is it just a statement that I put up on the board that I make you guys read? Well, at least somebody was honest in here, right? I think as we continue to have this desire to be in the presence of God, being in the presence of God kind of convicts us of these things. As we sit in the presence of God, sometimes we become more aware of the brokenness that is actually around us. Sometimes being in the presence of God helps us to realize that restoration takes empathy, compassion, patience. I wonder, are those things that convict us as well? There's an author named Henry Nouwen. Years ago, he died a few years back, and he would always say that he observed Yeshua would always move from solitude, then to community, and then to ministry. That everything began with solitude. It reminded me of a quote from Gandhi, who once said, I have so much to accomplish today that I must meditate for 2 hours instead of 1. I am so busy, I have so much to do, so much to accomplish, that I have to meditate for 2 hours now instead of 1. How many of you wake up saying, I am so busy, I have so much to do, I have to meditate for 10 minutes today instead of 5? It is supposed to be 20. But I made it easy for you. I said 5, 5, 5, right, for the beginners. But the goal is 20, 20, 20. That's right. So did you wake up and say, it's so much to do today, I have to meditate for 40 minutes today instead of 20? But this is another thing he said too. He said meditation is waiting on God. How many of us go into this practice of contemplative prayer saying, I'm going to sit here and I'm going to pray and I'm just going to wait for you, God? I have so many things going on. I have so many decisions I have to make. I have so many problems that are taking place in business and work and family that I'm just going to sit. Before I go out and make those decisions, I'm going to sit and I'm going to wait here on you. Is that a foreign concept to us? Why? Because that's not productive. That's not efficient. I have so much time in the day. I have to use every minute sparingly and to the nth degree. But in an Eastern concept, time doesn't matter until you are in the presence of God. Because then everything then is directed from that source. Lectio Divina is this idea of, let's do this. What's this? A sponge, right? No, it's what? Scrub mama, right? This is not a scrub daddy. This is a scrub mama, right? But what do we use this to clean, but every time I put this sponge into the source of water, I can move this water to something else, right? It absorbs, it sucks up, it takes all the water that is in this source of the bowl, and I can move it to another bowl. I can squeeze it out completely and move it out. And if I keep doing this, it just keeps filling up. It doesn't stop. The sponge was designed to absorb all of this water and be used for a separate purpose. The problem comes in when I'm starting to get to the bottom here. And I might have 1 or 2 more left. As long as there's water in the source, I can continue to transfer it. But once there's nothing left in the source, what can come out of the sponge? And if I continue to not give any water to this and maybe put this out in the sun, nothing will work. So how many of us feel like we're constantly giving and giving and giving all day long, helping people, serving people, figuring out problems, dealing with other people's drama, trying to give advice, trying to help people? And at what point do we feel like I have nothing left to give? Because we never go back to a source that actually fills us. The whole point of contemplative prayer, the whole point of pursuing God is because it's only through His source that we have something to give. If we're always just giving of ourselves and giving ourselves, but never being filled up, never being rejuvenated, never plugging ourselves into the source, never going back, who has endless water, eventually we run out and we become what? Miserable, angry, unhappy. What's his name? Walt. 2 weeks ago, what's his name? Whatever his name is. Yeah, it's still cloggy up here. Walt gave me a verse, or a word a few weeks ago from Isaiah. See if I can find Isaiah here. Isaiah 6 and 8. Some of you know this passage. This is where Isaiah is confronted by God, and I'll start in verse 6. It says, "And one of the seraphim, one of the angels, flew to me, having in his hand a live coal, which he had taken with the tongs from the slaughter place. And he touched my mouth with it and said, 'See, this has touched your lips. Your crookedness, your sin is taken away, and your sin is covered.' And I heard the voice of Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh saying, 'Whom do I send, and whom shall go for us?' And I said," Isaiah said, "Here I am, send me." We've heard this verse before, right? If you've been in church, you've heard this verse a few times. Here I am, send me. What's the Hebrew word for here I am? You remember? Can't even say it. Hanani. Hanani is the Hebrew word. I think it's the next one. Hanani is the Hebrew word. And it's interesting because it says, "Here I am," but the idea behind this is that I am my full presence, my readiness. I am absolutely willing to surrender everything about me to your call. And I wonder if when we wake up every morning, do we wake up with an idea of Hanani, like, "Here I am, Lord"? The idea of contemplative prayer is to sit before God and say, "Here I am willing to surrender everything to you. My entire day is yours. And I want to be in full presence of you right now. Here I am." Because every decision that comes out of my mouth, every word that comes forth from me, every action, every deed, every desire, I want it to be for you. I want it to bless you. I want it to bless the people around me. I want this to be for you. Because if it's not, then it becomes about me. How do we make this happen? How can I get to this point of Hanani? I teach a class at Nunez, and a leadership class. And so I've been studying this idea for a long time. And so one of the things that I've taught in the leadership classes is that our brains, our bodies, are a lot like a computer. We have a hardware system and a software system. A hardware system is the physical aspects of your body. It's also the physiology of your body, how your body works, the heart, the lungs, and all this other stuff. Question, how much does a human brain weigh? Any ideas? How much does a human brain weigh? Mandy? Take a guess. 7 pounds? What? What? 8 pounds? Depends on the size of the head. Yeah, anywhere from 7 to 12-ish, I think. But a brain is inside. Take the skull away, and how much does a brain weigh? 3.5 pounds. 3 pounds is the average weight of the muscle inside your skull. Now, this is an interesting question. Did you know that your brain consumes 20% of the oxygen that your body uses? I mean, if I weigh 180 pounds and my brain is 3 pounds, but my brain uses 20% of all the oxygen that my body uses, what does that say? It consumes, it needs the most amount of energy out of the entire body, your brain does. It consumes the most amount of energy of any muscle that you have in your body. Which should tell us, science has also told you, if you want to continue to be smarter as you grow older, because typically when you grow older, what do they say? You'll start losing your marbles, right? And science has shown that if you want to continue to keep your brain, what should you do? Work out. You want to be smarter as you grow older? Exercise more. Because your heart has to continue to keep up with the amount of energy that your brain needs. So start working out now, ladies. Start working out. Go to the gym. Start hiking, doing all these stuff, yes, that you love to do. Because when you get to my age, our age, I'm looking at the ladies over here because there's no young men. All the young guys are gone today. Like, where's all the boys? Your brain also has a software system, which is your values, your character, the philosophies, the virtues that you have, the things that help you understand about kindness and gentleness, generosity, compassion, control, empathy, all of these things. But did you know that your brain has between 80 and 100 billion neurons in your head? 80 to 100 neurons in your brain, and they transfer all of this information over 1 trillion times in decisions that you make all day. Do you even know what 1 trillion is? That's how many zeros is 1 trillion? Corey, you know this, right? 14. That was confident. 14. I don't know. It's 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0. I don't know. It could be something like that. It's a lot. And every time you learn something, these neurons are firing back and forth in this pathway, and to the point where you continue to do something over and over and over, and all of a sudden, that pathway becomes solidified. How many of you have ever driven home after work, just a rough day at work, and you're thinking about it, and you drive home, and then you pull up in your driveway, and you're thinking about work, and you're like, how did I get here? It seems scary, but here's what happens. Because the neural pathways in your brain have been solidified, you run on autopilot, and you just drive home. Your brain can do all of these functions at one time while it knows this is where I'm going. It's no different than when you say something to somebody, and then you think, gosh, why did I say that? Where did that even come from? And because maybe when you were a kid, you heard it over and over and over, and that pathway became so solidified in your brain that now that's just what you say. Or if somebody says, hey, Corey, I think you should start your own business, and the pathways say, I'll never be good enough to start my own business. I can't do that. I've been a failure all my life. I can't start my own business. Where does that come from? It's been built in somewhere. You learned it along the way that these things are now hardwired in your brain. Which is why I quote this passage all the time. Romans 12, 1. 12, 1 and 2. It says this. I call upon you. The other translations say, I beseech you. So others, I cry out to you. I plead with you. I beg you. Therefore, brothers and sisters, through the compassion of Elohim, to present your bodies as a living offering, set apart, well-pleasing to God, your reasonable worship. And do not be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind, so that you prove what is that good and well-pleasing and perfect desire of God. How do we be transformed? How can we be transformed from doing the same old things that we were taught, or as the world says to do this? How can we be transformed into something that brings honor and glory to God's will? You've heard me say this before. How does it end? You bring about, anybody? What you think about. I mean, it's a silly phrase, and my kids, they're not here today, but they were like, oh my gosh, yeah, I've heard it say it, blah, blah, blah. Like, you bring about what you think about, literally. Remember the story of the wolf, the two wolves? We've talked about that before. Which wolf do you feed? Because the wolf that you feed, if it's the one that's about negativity and selfishness and narcissism and all the things that you want, that is the wolf that becomes strong in your life. If that's what you feed, if that's what I think about, then everything that I think about on this side is what I'm going to bring about. And nothing changes. Nothing changes until I change the way and the focus of what I think and what I feed, my time and energy and everything else. Your brain has the power of something called neuroplasticity. These neural pathways that have been solidified because of neuroplasticity, your brain actually has the power to change. You can break those roads, those bonds that hold you like to believe that this is true. Those can be broken, and as Paul says, you can actually be transformed into believing something else, to thinking something else, to doing something else in your life. Just depends on what you feed. If we're constantly in a position where we're with negative people or always negative ourselves and see the negative and judging other people around us, or just are worried and anxious about everything else in the world, how will we respond to situations? In the same manner. This is why contemplative prayer or spiritual rhythms are extremely important. You made a comment this morning. You said the power went out in a Walgreens?
Yeah, bring it back medicine, and the power goes out, so they asked the whole store, and everybody's, complaining, but what are they going to do? But anyway, since the conference has been in my mindset, so I said, basically, it's the worst thing that happens to us this weekend, we got a good life, And one of the ladies I was playing a lot looked at me, and she was, you're right. And she shut up, and, but it's just...
How easy would it have been to just complain with everybody else? Oh, this sucks. The power's off. I got to come back. It's terrible. But because there was something in your life where all of a sudden you said there was something where now your perspective has started to change. And you started to think differently. And you recognize in this one moment, I could complain, or I could say, if this is the worst thing in my life, man, I got a great life. It's the worst thing that happens today. And what happened? One person noticed, and that affected her. This is why we do these spiritual rhythms, because spiritual rhythms actually starts to break those pathways and allows us to start thinking differently. Who's ever heard of Steph Curry? Anybody? Steph Curry? Steph Curry, Golden State Warriors, one of the, if not the greatest, you know who Steph Curry is, right, Aaron? One basketball person in the back. One of the greatest, I know who he is, greatest three-point shooters of all time. I found this interesting. His personal best, his father, Dell, made him take a summer off and learn to shoot in a new way. He took 500 shots a day, 3,500 shots a week, 14,000 a month, 168,000 a year, 2.5 million over 15 seasons, just in preparation for three-point shooting. So each year he took 168,000 practice shots so he could attempt 1,000 shots a season. On average, he takes 158 times more shots in practice than he does in a game. 158 times more. From this, he made 3,376 three-pointers, making him the greatest three-point shooter in history. All of this practice so he could just make 1/10 of 1% of his practice shots. 1/10 of 1% of his practice shots in a game. People say, man, Steph, sure, he's a great shooter. He's so lucky he makes so many. No. Luck is just opportunity meeting preparation. That's it. You see, we are rewarded in public for what we practice in private. Who you are in public is because of what you do privately. The things that you are benefiting from outwardly is because how you prepared beforehand. To win a game, your son plays baseball. What would happen if he didn't practice and he just showed up for the game? Right? There's a reason we practice these things over, and we talk about it in sports all the time, but why don't we do it spiritually? Why don't we prepare ourselves spiritually so when we encounter the world, we are ready to take it on? There's an old Spartan creed. Do you remember what it is? Do you know the old Spartan creed? The one who sweats more in training bleeds less in war. This is a mindset for thousands of years. The one who sweats more in training bleeds less in war. Are you prepared for the day? Because don't you seem like you encounter battles all day long? Doesn't it seem like there's an enemy that seems to be mounting up against you, telling you can't do this, or people that are doing this, or problems that are occurring? And are you prepared for that? Do you show up ready for war? Ephesians chapter 5. Somebody read Ephesians chapter 5, 14 through 21 for me, please. Abby?
Since anything revealed is a light, this is why it says, "Get up, sleeper, arise from the dead, and the Messiah will shine on you."
Okay, wait, stop there. I feel like everybody's tired this morning. Everybody stand up. Everybody stand up. Like everybody's kind of like, ugh. Like I feel like I'm the only one talking here. Just me and Kevin are like having a conversation. That's right. You've been jumping in too. Like everybody needs to like get up a little bit, shake it out. Like rise up, sleepyheads. Right? My translation is great. It says, 14, where is it at? That is why he says, wake up, you who sleep. Keep going. Arise from the dead. Keep going. Yeah. I'm just going to emphasize. Just keep going. Yes.
Pay careful attention to how you conduct your life. Come on. Live wisely, not unwisely. Use your time well, for these are evil days. So don't be foolish, but try to understand what the will of the Lord is. Don't get drunk with wine, because it makes you lose control. Instead, keep on being filled with the Spirit, singing psalms, hymns, and spiritual songs to each other. Sing to the Lord and make music in your heart to Him. Always give thanks for everything to God the Father, in the name of our Lord Yeshua the Messiah. Submit to one another in fear of the Messiah.
Subjecting ourselves to each one in fear of the Messiah. Excellent. So, be filled, right? We've talked about it many times. It's this idea of not just be filled once, it's what? Being filled. It's this constant idea, like I'm going to come before God every single day, all the time, so I can continually be filled up, so that this thing isn't empty. So that my cup isn't empty, so that every day it's full, so that I can give out to somebody else every day. Because there's no point in going into battle without any weapons. There's no point in going into battle without any armor, without anything in you. If you're absolutely tired and exhausted and you have nothing to give, what battle will you win? There's nothing. So each and every one of us, wake up and be being filled. So this is that time that we are privately getting together. But what does it say in verse 19? Speaking to each other in psalms and songs of praise and spiritual songs, singing and striking the strings in your heart. This is the idea of moving from solitude then to community. When I engage with people, how should I speak to you? How should I speak to you?
In this view, we could break out a song. We should.
We should. It's like The Greatest Showman, right? All of a sudden, like we start singing.
I knew that was how it's supposed to be.
But how often do you want to just sing, right? You know, like Kevin loves to come early and set up, but he doesn't come early to set up. He comes early so he can hear the singing. And then he sings while he's sitting here waiting. How many of us love to just go in the car and like when we sing, do you turn the radio up in the car when you're singing? Yeah, what do? Do you just listen to it? You sing because it's built into us. And so how often do we take that singing to lift somebody else up? And what is the point here? Why do I sing? Because I've been filled up. Now I have something to give. I have something to sing. I have something joyful. And then what does it say after that? We give thanks, gratitude, subjecting yourselves to each other. This is the ministry part. This is what Henry Nouwen was saying in the beginning of my sermon, right? We move from solitude to community to ministry, to serving other people. There's a process to it. I don't just jump right into serving because then I'm empty by 5 minutes in the day. I start my day with solitude, and I start my day with singing and praise and gratitude. Remember, because I journal gratitude every day. Then I engage with everybody else. Because then I'm ready for the day. I'm ready for what has to happen. You can be seated. Yeah. It's like Catholic Mass. Next slide. It's interesting. For those of us who say, man, I'm so busy. I don't have time for this. I'm busy. I got this to do. I got this to do. Next slide, please. In Chinese, the word picture is very much like Hebrew. It's word pictures. The word picture for busy in Chinese is Xin Wang. Heart and death are the two pictures. Is busyness giving us life or is it taking life? I mean, think about it. How do you feel after a day of just constantly busy, and I got nothing to do? It's almost like you're dead when you get home. It can, depending on if it's fulfilling. Maybe what holds us back from contemplative prayer isn't necessarily just being busy, but maybe it's, you said fear, which was interesting. I wonder if contemplative prayer sometimes is connected to reflection and emotion. And maybe I'm afraid to open my emotions up to God. Maybe I'm afraid to subject my heart open to God because I don't know what I feel. I'm afraid to feel. What might happen if I subject my heart openly, completely to God? That could be scary. In the book, How God Changes Your Brain, there's a great quote that says, research shows the brain is built, every one of you, the brain is built in such a way that we can all have occasional mystical experiences. How many of you want that? Or have heard people in the room saying, oh, I had this experience with God, and you're sitting there saying, I can never do that. Like, that's never happened for me before. Like, what? I guess that's just for certain people that can have these mystical experiences. But the author Newberg says, no. Your brain was wired in such a way that every one of you can have these experiences. And he says the more intense the contemplative prayer or meditation, the more likely to experience a mystical state. The more that you add these rhythms to your day and add these things to your morning every single day, you will start to find yourself having more and more of these moments, these God winks, these mystical experiences where something happens that you just can't explain it except to just say that it's God working in our midst. Or God whispering to me, saying something to me, and I heard this call to do something. The question is, do you prepare? Do you surround yourself with also a community that sings to you, that says positive things to you, or are you surrounded by just negativity all the time? Who do you surround yourself with? Because the brain will respond to those two areas. I've been studying this idea about identity for a long time. And I've talked about it in here. I've talked about it with other people. I've talked about different groups. And I've learned that our identity, which is how you see yourself, the way that you view yourself, is actually the controlling force of your life. How you view yourself is how you will make decisions and choices every day and in every conversation. The question that I have is like, what do you believe about yourself? Who are you? What do we believe as a community? Because how you act, you react to situations, how you plan things out, how you decide to change, how you love, these are all affected by the way that you view yourself. As I was pondering this thought this week, there was a passage from Yeshua that just struck me. And I was like, oh my gosh, like, why have I never thought of this before? In a couple weeks, we're going to be talking about the Beatitudes and going over those. But at the end of the Beatitudes, this is the very beginning of Yeshua's ministry, Matthew chapter 5. He's just starting to teach, and he starts out with these Beatitudes, but then he says this: you are the salt of the earth. But if the salt becomes tasteless, how shall it be seasoned? You are the light of the world. It is impossible for a city to be hidden on a mountain. And then in verse 16, he says, let your light shine before men so that they see your good works and praise your Father who is in heaven. He begins his ministry with his disciples by telling them, this is who you are. You may think you're just a fisherman. You may think you weren't good enough to make it into rabbi school. You may think you're just a tax collector, which everybody hates. But I now give you a new identity. This is who you are. Claire, can you come grab your guitar? There is something that I think that we need to start working on because, as I said, your identity defines everything that you do. Defines your actions, your thoughts, your words. And so there's an identity that I want us to share, but it has to be something that we share together. It has to be something that we say with action. So I want everybody to stand, shake it out again, like jump it up. Claire is going to give us a little energy here. Yep. Come on, Rustin, jump up. Jump up. Come on, Rustin. Up and about. Come on, start jumping. Yes. And I'm going to start these creeds, and you're going to say them with gusto, right? What's gusto? Enthusiasm. Well done, right? You're going to say these with passion and enthusiasm because this has to be something that you believe. And first of all, as I said in the beginning, your body's like a hardware, your physiology. You have to change your physiology. You have to get the blood moving. You have to get something going as we say these words because otherwise they can just be, no. Like, you have to get into this. You have to believe this because we want to transform the way that you think. And we're going to say these every single week, so just get used to it. Next slide. I am. No, I say I am. You guys say. Good. All right. Come on, let's try this again. I am. I am. I have. There is No one like me. I am. I will. Now believe that. That is who you are. No matter what negative thing you have that you learned growing up, no matter what you believed about yourself, this is the identity that God says, this is who you are. You are a child of God. You are loved. You have a unique purpose. Every single one of you was born and created with a specific purpose in mind. There is no one like you. There is no two fingerprints alike in the entire world. You were designed specifically. And God said, you are blessed. And you will also be a blessing to others. Believe that.